I know people who never work with more than one layer in their InDesign document. They manage all their objects using send to back, bring to front. Now, there's nothing wrong with that, technically, other than it will eventually drive you insane, especially in a complicated layout. No, it's much better to create at least a couple of layers in your document, and then use them to organize your objects. Now, every document starts with one layer called Layer 1. You can see that by opening your Layers panel. There's Layer 1, and all my objects are currently on that layer. Let's start organizing this document by creating more layers. You can do that in a couple of different ways. You could go to the Layers panel flyout menu and choose New Layer. Then you could give it a name, such as Text. Then I'll press Return or Enter to hit the OK button. Another way to make a new layer is to click the New Layer button at the bottom of the Layers panel. But when you do that, it gives you a generically named layer, just Layer 3 in this case. That's not very interesting. I'm going to delete that by clicking on the trash can icon. Instead, when I make a new layer, I prefer to hold down the Option or the Alt key when I click this New Layer button. That way, it forces InDesign to open the New Layer dialog box, and I can name my layer. I'll call this one Graphics. Okay, now I've got 3 layers. So how do I get my objects onto those layers? Well, I'm going to select one of my objects on my page, and you'll see that in the Layers panel, this little blue square lights up. That little blue square is a proxy for whatever is selected on the page right now. And I can drag that blue square up from Layer 1 into the text layer. When I let go of the mouse button, we can see that the blue square turned into a red square, and the object changed its color as well. Now, the object itself didn't change, but the frame edge highlighting did. The edge highlighting always reflects the color of the layer. The text layer right now is red, so this object highlights as red. Now, once again, the color change does not affect how this document will print or export to PDF. It only changes it on screen for reference. All right, let's go ahead and move the other text frames. I'll click on this one and shift-click on these others, and then drag that little proxy icon up to the text layer. Now let's handle our graphics. I'm simply going to select all these graphics by clicking on the first one. Oh, I accidentally selected the image instead of the frame, so I'll press the Escape key to select the frame. And now I'm going to shift-click on all these other graphics. And one more up here. And now I'll drag all of those onto my graphics layer. When I did that, you could see that they moved on top of the text. And of course, that's because the graphics layer is sitting on top of the text layer. So I'd like to move all those graphics down below the text layer, and I can do that by clicking and dragging this graphics layer down until I see a solid line between Layer 1 and text. I'll let go of the mouse button, and the graphics move down as well. I see one more problem here, and that is that this orange frame should be up between the image and the graphic. So I'm going to select that frame, and then move it up to the text layer. Now it's sitting on top of the text frame. That's not what I wanted either. So I need to move it down so that it's between the text frame and the graphic. Here's how I'm going to do it. I'll go back to my Object menu, and I'll choose from the Arrange submenu. Then I'll choose Send to Back. It's important to remember that all of those commands in the Arrange menu refer to the current layer. So Send to Back doesn't mean send behind all the objects. It just means send to the back of this particular layer. So in this case, it went all the way to the bottom of the text layer, which is behind that text frame, and the text layer is on top of the graphics, so it looks perfect now. The Layers panel actually gives us even more control over our document. For example, I can click on these eyeball icons to the left of the layer name to show or hide all the objects on that layer. If I click on the eyeball next to the graphics layer, all the graphics disappear. I'll turn that one back on, and then turn off the text layer. On a complicated layout, when you're trying to manipulate certain objects, being able to hide all the distracting objects is really helpful. Now, another thing you might do in a complicated layout is lock the layers. Let me turn on the text layer again, and then I'm going to click in the second column next to the eyeball to lock the text layer. That locks all the objects on that layer. Now, I'll be talking about locking later in this chapter, but you can see that anything that's on a locked layer cannot be selected. For example, I'll try and click on one of these text frames, and it clicks right through it to the graphic underneath. I simply cannot select that text frame. Now, there are 2 more tricks about the Layers panel that I want to point out. One is, if I want to select all the objects on a particular layer, I can hold down the Option or the Alt key and click on that layer. So, for example, to select everything that's on the text layer, I would first unlock it, and then hold down Option or Alt, and then click on the text layer. That selects all the objects on that layer. The second trick I want to point out to you is that you can double-click on a layer to open the Layer Options dialog box. And this offers all kinds of options. For example, I can change the name, the color, or even various behaviors. For example, I'm going to turn off the Print Layer checkbox. Now this layer will display on screen, but if I print or export a PDF, it just won't be there. The text will just disappear. I'll click OK and you can see an indication of that in the Layers panel, because the word text, the name of the layer, is in italic. Italic layers mean they're non-printing. As you can see, building and using layers isn't required, but it really helps you organize your documents. But whether you use lots of layers or only one, the Layers panel has one more trick up its sleeve. It lets you see and manipulate your stack of objects inside the layer, and you can do that by clicking this little twirly triangle. In the next movie, I'll explain how best to use that newfound power.